Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. I am Kirsten Howe. I'm the host today. We're going to be talking about real estate. The Bay Area real estate market has always been interesting. We know that over time prices generally go up, but in the short term, housing prices can be affected by a lot of different factors. And we have seen some dramatic changes in the last few years in our local real estate market. And I wanted to talk about that here because for many of our clients, especially those who are approaching retirement or in retirement, their home is their most valuable asset. And so what happens in the real estate market can have a significant effect on our clients. Joining me here today is our returning guest, Mark Shaw with Remax Accord. And the landscape now is very different from what it was in 2018 when he was first on our show. But Mark is an expert in Bay Area real estate, and he's going to talk to us about what has happened in the last few years and what's happening now in real estate. That's a little shout out to Flip Wilson. What's happening now? Mark has a graduate degree in education from San Francisco State, and he actually taught elementary education for 10 years before going into the real estate business. Now, when he did go into the real estate business, he really hit the ground running. He won Real Estate's Rookie of the Year award in 1998. And then he achieved the Top Agent President Elite Award and the Chairman and Platinum Club Awards year after year. So he really knows his stuff. When Mark is not focused on his clients, walking properties, answering the phone, sitting in front of his computer, doing his homework, he does some of the normal things that we all do, exercising, spending time with family, but he also is a fantastic singer. He specializes in Sinatra, and he also plays the violin quite beautifully. And he says that he also is trying very hard not to be the worst banjo player in Contra Costa County. Now, I've never seen him play the banjo, but I've seen him do the other things, and I'm definitely looking forward to a little banjo recital someday. But he's not here for that. He's here today to share his real estate expertise with us. Mark Shaw, welcome.
Well, thank you, Kirsten. It's a pleasure to be on your show today. And by the way, I just sold my banjos, so
No.
yeah,
That bad, huh?
Yeah, that bad. Yeah,
He just gave up.
neighbors call the cops.
Okay, well, I guess I won't get that little treat. I don't have that to look forward to, but that's okay. I enjoy your violin playing and your singing. All right, now, so we had you on the show almost 5 years ago. Oh gosh, that's hard to believe. And I think we all are aware that the real estate market here in the Bay Area has changed a bit since then. First of all, we had this little thing, you probably heard of it, the pandemic. Since the last time you were on the show, what did that do to our real estate market?
Well, that's a good question, Kirsten. The pandemic was when it first hit, everybody was scrambling. It's sort of like, you pull up one of those rocks in your yard and you see the ants running all around.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. Appraisers weren't going into homes. Open houses came to a grinding halt. The traditional way of marketing real estate just really changed overnight. And like restaurants, et cetera, and a lot of other public forums. But I think what happened was after the pandemic sort of settled in was people started working remotely, staying home, and noticing that their personal residence or primary residence was the most important thing because that's where they were
24/7. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that just catapulted the market into a 20%, roughly a 20% in Contra Costa and Alameda counties increase in appreciation. So it was very difficult.
But what is a typical appreciation? It's not 20%.
Typical United States appreciation over the U.S. is 3.6% per year.
Wow. Okay, so that really was a huge jump that we experienced. And that's because people were taking a look around and saying, if I got to be here 24/7, this is not the place. I got to move.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So, meaning that people in their tiny little apartments in San Francisco, because that's all that you can afford in San Francisco, started looking at Alameda County and Contra Costa County saying, hey, I could have a house.
Absolutely. And things quickly escalated. The condo market in San Francisco, if you had even a little balcony or a patio in a townhome or a condo in San Francisco, it was like gold. But if you didn't have any outdoor space, then those particular properties sat on the market, and there was a major exodus from a lot of the hubs across the United States, but mainly, largely in this San Francisco area. I had a client who said that every time she went to walk her dog, she saw 3 or 4 moving trucks, just pulled up to houses, unloading, and so there was a pretty good exodus from the city.
Yeah, and I guess once the pandemic really kind of settled in and people realized that this remote work thing was going to be, it wasn't just a 2 or 3 week thing, it was going to be a way of life. It opened up a lot of possibilities geographically for people.
Absolutely. We also saw a lot of people. We're in the East Bay here in the east of San Francisco, and we saw a lot of people coming up from the peninsula because the East Bay still was the best deal in town.
More reasonably priced. Yeah. Okay.
Most value.
Yeah. Biggest square footage for your dollar. Okay. So that was last year, the year before, etc. The pandemic's over. Some would say.
Burn out. Yeah.
What's happening now that's different from, say, a couple of years ago, and what's causing the changes that you're seeing right now?
Well, we have the Fed, who is ratcheting up interest rates. Prior to the Fed's rate hikes, we saw in this area, another 20% appreciation. So we were looking at pandemic levels were 20. And then from the pandemic, sort of towards the end of the pandemic, another 20%, which became absolutely insane when you're looking at an average 3.6% per year over year.
Okay.
So we had really cheap money, and that was overheating the housing market. People were offering, $100, $200, $1 million over asking price in some cases. And of course, that depends on where the property was priced to begin with.
Sure.
But the typical house had multiple offers, pretty much no matter where it was or what condition it was in.
Okay. And that was the case all through 2021, 2022. Not 2022, 2020 and 2021. Yeah.
Yes.
And so here we are at the end of 2022, but what's now happening? What's been happening this year?
So
as you said, the Fed is now stepped in, and not because they're concerned about Bay Area real estate prices, but
right. Yeah. I don't think they care much about us out here.
No, they don't.
So in 2008, we saw an appreciation. The bottom of the V for the 2008 fiscal crash was February of 2012. Oh. So if you were to set your watch to fast forward to 10 years later, February of 2022, ironically, that's when the market really started to change. And we saw it was pretty much overnight change in February, March of 2022, where properties started, there was some downward pressure on pricing. We first saw that there weren't the offers that were in as crazy as they were in the 10 years. Now, keep in mind that there are little micro markets all in between. So there were some slowdowns in between, but they weren't very long, they didn't last very long, and they were market specific, depending
Okay,
on
so
the town.
so like generally there was a steady increase since the bottom, which was February 2012. That's an interesting date because we think, oh, it was 2008, but it wasn't done tanking until 2012.
Yes.
Since then, a pretty steady increase with some blips here and there.
Right.
And then this February, as you just said, it kind of flipped overnight. And was that when the Fed first started raising rates?
Yes.
Okay. See, I didn't remember. It was that long ago. Okay. And that people reacted to that pretty quickly.
Yes. Now let me back up for a minute. I can't remember. The market may have just run out of steam on its own, and then the rate hikes exacerbated.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have what's called in our industry buyer fatigue, and buyers were basically just, I mean, they, for the lack of a better word, pummeled during, it was a seller's market for so long that
Yeah.
buyers were just absolutely tired of slogging. A lot of buyers got out of the market because they weren't interested in competing with 18 other offers and going
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands over asking without any contingencies.
Yeah. They probably, yeah. I'm guessing a lot of buyers just said, I can't compete. And so I'm just going to sit on the sidelines for a while. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So since the Fed has started, the market cooled off maybe naturally, and then the Fed made it worse by
Yeah.
increasing interest rates, which means mortgage rates go up. If the Fed raises interest rates, eventually, when the banks turn around to lend it for people to buy homes, they gotta make their money too.
Absolutely.
So that affects. Talk to me about how that has affected our first-time buyers, for example.
Well, that's a really good question too, Kirsten, because first-time buyers were affected. Their purchasing power was affected by 40%. So they actually lost 40% of their purchasing power when the Fed hiked the rates, and prices were still at their all-time highs. There was a saying in real estate, the market is sticky going down. That means the seller whose neighbor, whom he didn't care for too much, sold for a certain price. Let's say this neighbor sold for $1 million and hit that proverbial golden window of opportunity.
Yeah.
The homeowner left behind is not going to sell. He's going to do anything he can to sell for 800,000, just out of principle.
Yeah, get that price. Yeah.
Yeah. So it takes some adjusting on the seller's side to really adjust prices, and that only happens when a seller is motivated. So the prices remained high for some time, or they have started to adjust.
Right. But but it's still maybe cooler in that there aren't those, people bidding way over asking, multiple offers. Maybe that is a little bit easier for the buyers.
Yes, and yes, it is easier for buyers. This is, I know that we're going to talk a little bit about, what are the opportunities in this market a little later in the show. It's neither a buyer's nor seller's market right now. It sort of becomes, it's so buyers are reading the news, and the news is always either really the market's really hot or the market's in the tank. It's never a normal, because it doesn't sell, right?
Newspapers and news stations, they need to sell, and fear
Yeah.
sells. Yeah.
So they want to make it as bleak or as robust as possible.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so for example, I have a listing now that is not selling. It's a great neighborhood. It's a nice offering, single story home in Walnut Creek that's not selling. But I have a buyer as well, and we just competed and did not get a property in the Oakland area that had multiple offers. And that's all about pricing and value.
Mm-hmm.
So it just really depends where the seller prices the property. And so you have two different scenarios going on at the same time.
Right. The Walnut Creek is sort of new. That wouldn't have been happening a couple of years ago. Somebody would have bought that and probably paid more than the asking price.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody did down the street.
Oh, there you go. You got your seller hanging out. So, okay. So there's sellers are maybe sitting tight for their reasons. They want the old price. They want to cash out at the top of the market, which maybe that's not realistic right now. So they're sitting tight, and buyers, I'm thinking, they're reluctant to, they're afraid that they're going to pay too much, maybe that prices are coming down. And if I wait, maybe I'll get a better deal.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're absolutely right. The buyer, two of the buyers' biggest fears are paying too much and buying a lemon.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And so they don't, the conventional wisdom sort of spreads pretty quickly throughout the society, and buyers do not want to be the fool. They don't want to like Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. You look like a fool. They don't want that. So they don't want their family looking at them that way, or their but at the same time, there's a little bit of a stalemate. Well, we can talk about inventory in a minute as well.
Yeah.
That there's a stalemate because there are a lot of sellers that are not moving, because 85% of all mortgages are in the United States are under 6.5%.
Oh, so if you were to sell and try to buy another house, you're probably going to have a higher interest rate than what you currently have. And that's not fun.
Absolutely not fun.
So the sellers who really don't have to sell, but they're kind of thinking, I'd like to sell, and they can hang on. They can sit tight for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
what is that doing to your inventory?
It's creating a blockage of inventory, which we already have and had. If you look at the peak of the market, 4% of the total units in the United States were for sale.
4%. Okay.
4%. And in a regular market, it's about 2.5% of the total units in the United States. Right now, we're barely at 1% of units for sale.
So that's really tight.
It's really tight.
That's a supply issue.
It's a big, you can't sell something that's not for sale.
That you don't have. Yeah. Wow. That is tight. Okay. So that's, it's a lot of things happening at the same time. There's not enough housing on the market, and people's purchasing power has really been cut down. Are there solutions? Are there little secret tips or anything that these first-time buyers can take advantage of that you know of?
There are certain loan programs that I've heard out there that are, but they're within zones, certain zones, and only qualify. There's some restrictions on them for a high 3% interest rate, certain programs.
Okay.
And then there's also what's called a new product called a 2-1 buy down, whereby the seller, typically the buyer asks the seller to pay for the buyer's loan to buy down the rate of the borrower's loan, the buyer's loan. And that happens, I think that it goes the first year. The reason they call it a 2-1 buy down is because the first year, let's say you have a 6.5% rate, maybe the rate is 4.5
for a year.
For the year, for just the first year. And then the second year, it might go to 5.5%. So there are programs like that, and sellers are offering those incentives to buyers. Some sellers are.
Some sellers will do that.
To entice buyers, incentivize them to purchase their property.
All right. So, I mean, what we have now is maybe a challenging real estate market, but it's not a market, I think, in crisis like we had in 2008, 2009. What's different between now and then, would you say?
That's a really good question, because that's on the minds of a lot of buyers.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yes.
If I buy now, is it going to cut in half in 30 days? Yeah.
Right. Is the house I buy today going to go down to zero next week?
Yeah. Is it going to be completely underwater for the next 10 years? Yeah.
Yes. So there's a couple of major differences from the 2008 market, Kirsten, that I've seen in a lot of the data that's out there in my research. One of them, in 2008, there was a severely declining home values, and that was due to a lot of lending, non-restricted lending practices.
I mean, kind of what we would consider inappropriate right now.
That's right.
People who had no business borrowing that amount of money.
Yes. Yeah. The credit quality was not good with borrowers, and banks were just, as we know, riding high on
throwing money
making
out the
loans.
door.
Yes. And so that greatly affected this. The second thing was a massive job layoffs, massive unemployment combined.
Which we definitely don't have now.
No, we don't. We have some unemployment and some layoffs. You read about it in the paper, Twitter, and some of the tech.
Yeah.
But that's, in my opinion, that's temporary, and tech isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Tech's
and
here to stay.
Right. Those are kind of high profile things. Everybody hears about it, but the numbers across the country, and I will tell you, in my industry, people are fully employed. You cannot find an employee, so.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite. Human resources scarce.
Right. Okay. So those are a couple of big differences.
Right.
So maybe people don't need to fear the absolute worst is going to happen if they buy a house today.
I don't think so, because think about, in 2008, there were a lot of 100% financed homes. So a lot of folks didn't have a lot of equity to begin with. There was just no equity in the home. Today, across the country, there is a staggering $30 trillion of home equity.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big number. That's a lot of zeros. 30 trillion.
Yes, 30 trillion.
I don't know if I could even write that number. I would get lost somewhere. But okay, that is fascinating. So, is it still a good idea to get into the real estate market if you're kind of you had buyer frustration and now you're listening to this show? What do you say?
Well, personally, two things. One is I think it's a great time to purchase a home right now, especially if it's your primary residence,
Okay.
because values have been impacted from the highs.
Mhm.
Now they may go down a little bit more, but real estate's long-term investment anyway. You're looking to a 5 to 7 years minimum of home ownership, and everything sort of washes out. So even if it goes down after a buyer's purchased, then there's plenty of time to recover. The other thing is, anecdotally, I met with a young couple at an open house several weeks ago, and they're a member of a real estate group, sort of chat group, and people who own homes and investment homes, and it was a clear consensus in their group that this is really a great time to buy. And especially when I mentioned primary residence, because if you think about this, your primary residence is where it is much more than an investment. It's where you raise your family. It's where you watch Oprah reruns. It's where you wake up in the morning, where you build a life.
Right.
And so, would you rather have to buy a dumpy house because it's a house in a neighborhood or that you're not thrilled with, or on a busier street, or with something that is always going to be there and affect your lifestyle or your life quality of life? Or would you rather buy something that you're thrilled with, and just you wake up every morning, you're saying, oh, this is great? So that's worth something too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a new saying in the real estate market now: if you buy now and the values have been affected, you can marry the price of the house, and you can just go on a date with the interest rate, because you can always rates may go down again.
You can always refinance. You can get
Exactly.
rid of that interest rate after a few dates. It's not working out.
Yes. So I think it's a great time to buy. I really do.
Well, and also, I mean, just real estate, especially, real estate, as you said, is a long-term investment, and it really, really enhances people's ability to accumulate wealth, I think, like nothing else. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. There's a statistic, and you've heard me say this before, 8 out of 10 statistics are wrong. But there's a statistic that homeowners have 40% more net worth than non-homeowners. And one of the big, big things with the American dream of homeownership is that rents will continue to rise over time. But if you purchase a home, you've effectively locked in your rent payment, your mortgage payment,
right,
or housing payment for 30 years.
right.
So that won't change if it's a fixed rate.
If it's a fixed rate. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. The landlord's going to raise the rent every year.
You
That's
bet.
what they do. But if you've got a fixed rate mortgage, you're set. You're good to go. Okay. I'm going to turn to our audience questions. For those of you listening to this on a recording, you don't get a chance to ask a question, but people who are watching us live do. Okay. So, Mark, here we go. Have you seen Prop 19 having any effect on the market? That's a great question that I want to know the answer to.
That's a really good question. So Prop 19 was was supported by the National Association of Realtors to free up housing inventory, and it was to benefit the fire departments.
Right.
So they played it perfectly, and they put a bunch of money into supporting that. The opponents just couldn't outspend the proponents of the measure.
So it got passed. Yeah.
So it got passed.
Yeah.
And what we've seen, I don't know if we've really seen a much, how should I say, a shakeup of inventory with it.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been very long. It only became effective last February 2021. So it hasn't been a real long time that it's been in place, but that's fascinating because that was the goal, is to get some more inventory out there, and it doesn't seem to have had that effect.
No, I'm not seeing a lot of people moving their tax bases from one county to another.
Right.
That's one of them. And then the other one was the step up in
the parent-child.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really not hearing a lot of stories about it. I'm not seeing it happening. But like you said, sometimes it takes a couple of years to really.
Yeah. Well, real estate is not the same as going to 7-Eleven and buying a Slurpee. It's a big deal. So it might take time for that effect to be seen in the market. I don't know. Okay. Here's another question. If a parent wants to help, but doesn't necessarily want to give money to a child for a down payment, can the parent help their child by buying the property together? I don't know. Have you seen much of that? I mean, with buyers losing so much purchasing power, are they turning to their parents, and are they doing co-ownership deals?
Well, I haven't seen a whole lot of that. I've seen more of the gifting of funds towards a down payment. That we've seen a lot from grandparents, from parents, because I mean, let's face it, the values of real estate have far surpassed income charts.
Right.
So, but there may be, I mean, that's a real tricky one, because if you're on title with your child, there could be other issues with that.
Yeah, I was gonna chime in too, as the attorney who's always looking for what could possibly go wrong.
Right.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to do something like that, you need a real estate lawyer involved in this. So
I agree.
That's bottom line. Okay.
Yeah. And I think the question might be as a co-signer on the property, so to use the parents' credit. That's how I'm kind of reading that.
Yeah, and that might be something that you don't want to take on if you're in your late 60s.
Right.
Just saying. I don't know. Okay. Are there areas or cities in the Bay Area that you're seeing right now that have more availability or affordability without compromising much on desirability? Okay, so this listener wants to know what's the secret? Where should I be looking?
Right. What's the best area for the least amount of money that I can buy, that I can spend on a. I think that there are some in the East, here in the East Bay, it's still a good deal compared to the Peninsula, Marin, some of those other high indexed areas. And so I think within the East Bay, I think there are some pockets of Martinez, Concord. If you want to go out, because Concord and Martinez are still part of the Bay Area. Once you start going out to Bay Point and
Brentwood, Antioch.
Yeah, that no longer is really, I mean, it's not, in my opinion, not considered part of it. There's a big chasm
Okay.
separating the hub, San
Right.
Francisco, Oakland, and possibly the tech sector down the peninsula
Okay.
from those areas. So I think
Yeah.
I would, if it were me, I would probably be looking in some of the nicer areas of Concord,
Okay.
Martinez, Pleasant Hill. You might find a deal there, but Pleasant Hill got so hot for a while. It was
Yeah.
the hottest market in the United States for a brief time there.
Oh, is that right? Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
It hit that sweet spot between affordability and desirability.
Yeah. It is a nice town, and it just kind of nestled in there and nobody knows about it now, but now everybody knows about it. Okay. That's good advice. Concord or Martinez. Thank you for that. All right. Let me scroll just a little bit and make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay. That's the end of our listener questions. Mark, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I always enjoy talking to you, whether it's about real estate or whatever the heck else we talk about. And I always learn a lot. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome, Kirsten. And thank you again for having me on the show.
Okay. And so that was real estate expert, Mark Shaw. And I am glad you were able to join us today. Join us next time in a couple of weeks. And I look forward to connecting with you then.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcounsel.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcounsel.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode in 2 weeks. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcounsel.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.